minutes after 6, and again, I appreciate you being here at tonight's Northeast Housing Oversight Strategies Committee meeting. Happy New Year to the Oversight Committee, to everyone we've not had a chance to see yet. Thank you for being here. I trust everyone has had a chance to sign in and grab the agenda for the evening. We have much to do, if you can believe it. We've been at this now for, what, almost 5 years? Is that it?
We started in June of 15.
We started in June of 15. Seems like it was before that. But we've been at this for a while, and we've got, I think, some good momentum around a few of the items that we've been working on. We continue to work through the challenges because we're committed to making sure that what we provide and what we present are the greatest opportunities for communities of people who've been impacted historically and repeatedly as it relates to affordable housing through rental and or ownership possibilities. So thank you for being here. I look forward to our work. You know who I am. I chair the Oversight Committee. For those who may be here the first time, the kind of some clearinghouse items, if you go straight back to the rear of the building, there are the restrooms. And again, we ask everybody to sign in. At some point, we will be pausing it in order to take advantage of what is provided. We'll do a brief roll call from our Oversight Committee, just acknowledging your presence, and I will go to my left, or at least all of those who are sitting at the table, if you would just acknowledge your presence. Starting with you, ma'am.
Who, me?
No, you.
I am Karen Edwards.
Go ahead.
Virgie Ruiz.
Felicia Tripp.
Tristan Dallas.
Lisa Bates.
Cupid Alexander.
Dr. T. Allen Bethel.
Wonderful. And then the guests that are to my left, the staff person.
Leslie Goodlow, PhD.
Shannon Callahan, also of the Portland Housing Bureau.
Wonderful. And so, Shannon, you are actually up to give us the first update.
Dr. Wolf, would you like me to go to the main?
You can do it right here. That's fine. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 2019. I just wanted to take this moment to thank you all for your service. I know you have been working with this committee for a long time, but in particular in the last year that I've been serving as the director and the interim director, I have really appreciated your guidance and oversight of our work in North and Northeast. I know we have had some very interesting and discussions to make sure that you know what we are doing and that you are, as Dr. Holt would say, holding our feet to the fire. And I just wanted to say I greatly appreciate the role that you take in ensuring that we're adhering to the North and Northeast strategy for the benefit of the community that we're all intending to serve. So thank you. And I'm hoping that we have just as productive of a year in 2019. So I don't think I'll take the full time, but there are a few just kind of general updates about the Bureau and about some of the progress that we know to date on some of the projects that you've been addressing. First of all, I'd like to just give you a simple project update. The Magnolia 2 project has actually started to break ground, which is very exciting. The Argyle project, the REACH project in the Kenton neighborhood, just received its final funding approval for City Council right before the holiday. And I believe we'll be breaking ground soon. And council is taking up the final funding approval for the North Williams project next week, which will also move it into the construction phase shortly thereafter. So a very exciting time to have a lot of projects actually underway all at once. I wanted to also let you know that we are in the beginning phases of budget submissions for City Council. We are at the Housing Bureau, as are all of the other city bureaus, under a 1% constraint budget when it comes to our general fund. This should have a very limited impact on the Housing Bureau's budget, primarily because most of our funding is not general fund. Of the $189 million that we had on our budget last year, only $3 million of those were general fund. But I did want to at least let you know that that is starting to occur. There are not going to be major program changes in our budget overall next year. We are looking to add some existing staff out of existing resources. As well, we are awaiting what's called direction to develop. So the city commissioners under this budget process would have to give us direction to develop any new packages that involved new funding. It's a new concept that they're testing out this year, but thus far we have not received any formal directions to develop from any of the city commissioners. I am always happy to take back any interesting concepts or ideas that you would like, and I'm sure I'm sure Mr. Alexander from the mayor's office would be as well. You may recall that we have programmed $200,000, and we're working to develop a program right now in-house, and then also start to do some community engagement after we have some program parameters identified, to be able to provide support for our homeowner retention programs. So it's service dollars, not just capital dollars. It's coming from a federal source of funding, but it's one of the things that we've heard repeatedly from this committee, that you'd like us to make sure that we have some additional services, not just the construction or the home repair itself, but the support that our homeowners, our longtime homeowners, are needing to stay in their home. So we're looking at a variety of different concepts, including long-term estate planning, as well as we're finding that some of the homeowners just have additional challenges from our team that's working directly with them. So there'll more to come on that. I also wanted to let you know about 2 different changes in Housing Bureau staffing. One of which is we will be welcoming a new assistant director to the Housing Bureau on January 22nd. Molly Rogers is joining us from Home Forward. She is the Director of Asset Management and Housing Policy. Matthew Shabold will be resuming expanded duties as the Policy and Planning Manager. I'm very excited to be working with both of those individuals and the rest of our executive team, which includes Ms. Leslie Goodlow. And we will also be getting ready to post shortly a new position at the Housing Bureau, which is a standalone equity and inclusion manager. Matthew had been acting as both policy and an equity manager. We feel like it's important to have a dedicated position, and the skill set that I'm particularly interested in looking at for equity and inclusion managers at the city. Sometimes the work is focused really on the internal hiring practices, and sometimes it's focused on the external programs and policy analysis, and sometimes it's a little bit of both. Leslie Goodlow is our business operations and equity manager, and Leslie is being tasked and is doing a great job with equity issues as they relate to hiring and retention in the Bureau. But this position, I am looking for to be focused on really doing the deep equity analysis and make recommendations for program changes at the Housing Bureau. I feel like the impact that we directly have with the community, it's important that we're re-looking at and analyzing our programming and looking at equity from all angles. We do, but I think we need I think a dedicated position is the direction that the Bureau needs to take for the next, to really deepen our work around equity. So I expect, we're still working through some of the final details, but I would expect that we'll do a public posting probably in the next few weeks, and we'll make sure that everybody here knows about that opportunity when it opens up, but I wanted to make sure you had advance notice of that. And if you have recommendations or know of folks when the posting comes out, please do make those referrals. We are really, we'd really value your help and support in trying to recruit for that position. That is kind of a short synopsis of what I wanted to update you on this evening. Did you have any questions for me or anything that we could specifically provide updates on?
Shannon, can you give us the update, because I have the form in front of me, on King Park, North Williams, and New Meadows as well? Any updates on those? Those are the only ones you didn't cover.
So New Meadows opened earlier this year. And I can't recall the month, but I don't think it was maybe mid-year. And so that is operational. King Parks has been approved for funding also at the end of last year. I apologize for not mentioning that. And I believe they should be moving into the construction phase very soon. I'm sorry, Felicia, what was the third one?
North Williams, I'm just going down.
North Williams is being funded next week by city. I expect that it would be funded and approved by city council next week, but they will have to approve it. So it goes to city council. If approved, it would then move to the construction phase rather rapidly.
Okay, that's it. I was just going down the list.
Was there any, and if I missed it, I apologize, but was there any information in relationship to our last meeting around the strategy to create new homeowners? Was there any information that you wanted to give in terms of helping us know where current status is, if anything's moving?
I don't believe that I have had a recent update on on any new homeowners necessarily since our last report. I know that there are a number of folks working with the Portland Housing Center right now with pre-approval and are actively in the market, seeking the right opportunity for them, whether it be using the North and Northeast interstate funds specifically in interstate, or as you may recall, last year we added 10 citywide sources of funding to allow preference policy families to have the opportunity to also purchase elsewhere in the city. So I think that my understanding is folks are looking at a variety of both of those options, and we're starting to prepare internally for the next round of preference policy for the homeownership units that will be coming online in the new developments, particularly the Olin and Kirkpatrick, I believe. And I don't have that details in front of me, but we're getting ready to open. There's some internal work to do, database work and things like that, and we're starting to prepare to do another round of applications for those new opportunities for homeowners. So that would be my short update on that, and I think we can provide you more detail if you'd like something else.
That'd be great. And then just in terms of the strategy we talked about in December, is there any update just in terms of how things are moving forward? I know it's been not quite a month, but as you laid out, how we're going to move into the potential of 82 homeowners from the December meeting.
I don't have anything to update other than that we're working on the work plan right now and working with our partners to get those units built. I have not had a further update. I don't believe I would have Dana. I don't see Dana Ingram in the audience, but as last I had.
She's here.
Oh, she is? Oh, hi, Dana.
She's sitting in the back and way.
Dana, I don't believe we have had an update on any of the progress on the PCRI homeowners or construction update since we last met.
There's no new updates regarding anything. We're just working on the plan right now.
A little louder so everybody
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay.
That was difficult to hear.
With the holidays and such, there hasn't been a whole lot done. We're just working on the new preference policy round and then also just trying to follow all the new developments, but nothing additional.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other questions from the Oversight Committee? For Director Callahan.
Sure, I got one. Are there are there any policies or anything that this group should be tracking coming up in the legislature, statewide? Anything of concern that might affect some of the work that's being done in North and Northeast Portland?
Well, there's much of what would happen at the state level, I think, would affect a lot of, a lot of different communities throughout Portland. But there was released today a legislative concept for restricting no-cause evictions, as well as requiring, under some circumstances, relocation assistance. I have done a cursory review of the bill, but I haven't had a chance to go kind of line by line and analyze that. But the Speaker Kotek, I think, had announced and a rent stabilization bill as well that would potentially cap rent increases on an annual basis. So I think there's more to come on that. Obviously, it's a legislative concept. The session hasn't officially started, but limiting and resolving this issue regarding people being able to essentially terminate tenancies for no reason, really has an effect on displacement. And frankly, we know that when the decisions are made, people use bias, and they use race-based bias when it comes to using no-cause evictions. So, it's significant not just for displacement, but it could be a significant step forward as well for, really affirmatively furthering fair housing in the state. That would be the major piece of legislation, I think, that actually is coming out of the state that I am aware of, that affects the work of this committee. Overall, you may know that the governor's budget contains $400 million in new resources for housing generally, more support for helping shelter siting and shelter creation. Multnomah County and the city of Portland have done a lot in terms of providing temporary shelter, but there are real gaps everywhere else, frankly, in the state. And in terms of even just temporary housing. There's just generally more capital funding recommended in the governor's budget. Again, this is all really preliminary, as they haven't started a session yet, but it's it's very hopeful. There's never been a rent stabilization bill of this type, or a no-cause bill of this type that was introduced by the legislative leadership at the state level. So it's very promising.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions for Shannon from the Oversight Committee? Well, thank you, Director Callahan. We appreciate it very much. Next, we have Diane Lynn, Executive Director, Proud Ground. Please come and join us and your team right here at the table.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your cough partner tonight, so I have water nearby too. So apologize in advance for that. I'm going to ask Steve Messanetti to join me for just a few minutes. Actually, Gina Woolley is en route right now to join me, and she's going to be providing half of this presentation. So I'm leading off anyway, so as soon as she comes, we'll do a bit of a trade-off here, and could be any time. So
You know
again,
we're going to pause. Since
Yeah, here's Gina
Hold the
behind
phone.
you.
Gina's walking in and the pizza has arrived. So why don't we take about a 10-minute break and let everyone go get plates and so forth, and then we will recommence.
all right,
So,
look forward to
there we
talking
go.
with you all.
All right.
All right, you're welcome.
Good job.
Again, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with you this evening. We've been looking forward to this opportunity to present the 5020 condo project. I'll start by saying that is a working title. There'll be a naming process in our community outreach, which we'll chat about a little bit later. I'm looking forward to introducing you to our team and to expressing how much progress we've made since we saw some of you last spring. So are the slides coming up? Oh. Let's see if this works.
Good luck, because I need you to show me how to do it. Left to right.
There we
There.
go. Okay. Yay. Technology is on my side tonight. Okay. So this is a rendering of the building we wanted to share with you. It's different than what you saw before. And if you have questions about the design, the team is here to answer those questions for you too. We're just going to move forward through the information on the project. The high-level information, of course, is the title is the address, 5020 North Interstate, so that explains that. We've increased the number of units by adding a 6th floor to the building to fill out the available floor area ratio for this particular site, to do more cross subsidy, to expand the mixed income nature of the building, and to achieve highest and best use on an urban location like this. Most of you know, again, it's 20,000 square feet, the site itself. There's common area, again, 6 floors now, 16 parking spaces, none of which are required at this time. And again, let me emphasize, there's 64 units, and 40 of them will be permanently affordable units. We've expanded the commercial space a little bit, and then there's about a 1,400-foot enclosed play area for the children. The next slide shares with you the project updates since last spring. Again, we've just mentioned the 6th floor addition, and again, we're happy to answer questions about that. We think we can leverage more of those units to, again, bring more resources into the project and fill out the space at the site even better. The pre-development loan has been secured, and the LIFT funding is approved. The schematic drawings and design development plans are complete and meet all the requirements and maximize the amenities to the families. We've got a real eye towards the long-term maintenance of this building because it is a condo. We want to make sure we keep, in fact, Gina's been, I think, a real champion for that message, that we want to be sure that the buyers of these units don't have special assessments and can really have a building that's durable long-term, and that there aren't additional costs that we didn't anticipate. We've talked about the ground floor commercial, and that's the active use on the main floor at a very crucial corner in the community there at Interstate and Alberta. We changed up some of the design on the main floor to create some real, again, active use, so that the building really fits into the community and is an asset to the community. We've asked for a grant from Prosper Portland to help support that affordable space, and we're hoping to get a minority or woman-owned business into that location. We'll be working, we hope, with Prosper Portland to help make that happen. We presented the project to the Overlook Neighborhood Association, to the board, its executive committee, and then the full neighborhood group, and they've approved that's satisfied the requirement of the city. And we've filed for design review approvals with the city. There is an internal diverse team of people that are working with the board of directors at Prague Ground and advisory committee members to help advise us on this project also, because we are new to this and we're breaking some real new ground. So the next slide talks about the affordability, and I just want to point out, I know this slide looks a bit dense, but we wanted to share with you all that from the very beginning of this project, it's been critically important, having worked as long as we have with preference policy families, that we provide 2 and 3 bedroom units for families, that these are places people may stay for the rest of their lives. They might, we're hoping that this place really we're able to create a real intentional community within the building, and we intend to accommodate families. The first, up to the last 3 lines of this slide are the affordable units up to 100% of median income, and the additional units on the last 3 lines are really the market rate units. We don't want to go high end. We're not changing any of the amenities at all. They're going to be exactly the same as all the other units in the building. Some of them may be on the top floor, but they will be sold at a mid-level market rate value to bring, again, resources to the table. And The one-bedrooms are all market rate units. We're not intending to apply any of those to preference policy families. From the very beginning of this project, I had Steve up here with me earlier, but I want to point him out now. Habitat for Humanity Portland Metro East has been a very close partner from literally the inception of this of the decision we made to respond to the NOFA for this site and for the subsidy. So I just want to point out that they are going to be providing additional subsidy for the 11 units below 60% of median income and bring their assets to the table to help us achieve even lower MFIs well beyond what was required in the NOFA, because we know that families are making money at that level and we want to achieve success for a range of families for this project. As you may or may not know, Proud Grounds entering our 20th year this coming year as a community land trust, and we have the infrastructure and the team and the expertise to supervise and be the stewards for the long-term affordability that this project offers. And we're just very proud of the work we've done in that area. You're going to hear from Gina Woolley in a few minutes. She's the lead owner's representative on this project. I've relied on her entirely every step of the way. Sometimes, at times, maybe she doesn't want to hear from me, but we are working shoulder to shoulder on this project, and given her experience and background in the community, it's just been a huge asset to have her on the team. Carlton Hart Architecture, and we have Brian Carlton here with us tonight, and Martin Sirhan is with us, and there's other people on that team who've been really actively involved in the design of this project. I think many of you know of their work in the past, and they've been involved in other important projects here in Northeast, and we're thrilled to have them on the team. Again, if you have design-related questions, they can help us answer those. LMC Construction, who's represented by Ken Bello tonight, who's here, has been with us since day one. These two partners have really been very patient through very difficult early stages of the project, and we're thrilled to have them and their history and their track record on the project. The Housing Development Center is our pre-development partner. They're not here tonight. They would have been, just bad timing. Extraordinary expertise in both the finance and the project management components of the project, and they're with us, again, every step of the way, and their expertise has been awesome. They've entered the world, the brave new world of condo development, and have really been working with us on ways maybe we can duplicate this model. And I think their expertise from the nonprofit world is just a huge asset to the project. So very briefly on, oops, I think I'm behind on my slides, so sorry. This is our team. I just want to mention briefly, and I'm going to hand it over to Gina to continue through the presentation. Again, Proud Ground, Habitat for Humanity has been, as most of you know, a dedicated partner in the collaborative work of really serving the preference policy families in this program. We've got a history of working with the communities of color, almost I think now we are at 50% people of color in the homes that we already have in our portfolio in Portland. 63% is the medium income we're serving in our program across the boards. And I think we're at about 67% people of color on our standard wait list. This is outside the preference policy process. So our team is very diverse and working cross-culturally, and we're, again, very proud of that history. Habitat is also obviously targeted at the 35 to 60% median income that's so critical in this work, and 90% of their households in 2016 were families of color. We continue to be a proud member of the AW Collaborative, and with our partners that we've worked so long and so hard with to help preference policy families become mortgage ready. And at the same time, we're also thrilled to work in partnership with the Portland Housing Center and their staff to help identify, manage one list together to get us closer and closer to identifying families who are interested in this project, who are mortgage ready, and have that convergence happen that we've talked a lot about. We understand that this process has taken a long time, but it takes a while for people to become mortgage ready. And I think the team at Portland Housing Center now, with Portland Housing Bureau helping us connect so that we're really marketing this product to families to make sure this is where they want to live, both location and the type of units we have to offer. So there's a lot of marketing going on starting now, and we're going to, again, by the time this project's done, we hope to have families ready at that moment, and we're talking about 2 years down the road. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Gina and have her talk to you about the next steps.
Good evening, everybody. We are getting ready to kind of move into a much more intense community outreach process. We have withheld going out and doing a lot of meeting with community organizations until we had our major pieces of financing in place. So what was critical to because we didn't want to create expectations and then not be able to deliver on them. So we needed to get we needed the LIFT dollars. We needed to get approved for the LIFT dollars, which happened in September. And we needed our pre-development loan, which is critical to us finishing our design development. Prior to being able to start construction, we needed to get that in place, and that just happened in December. So we are now ready to move out and do much more targeted meetings with all of the community stakeholders, particularly organizations that serve Black families and children. We have a list of the ones that we will be reaching out to have individual meetings with to talk about the project, to talk about the timeline for the project. You know, some of those folks will have people in the process that are on the list, and if not, it's at least a way to encourage them to make their families aware of this process so perhaps they can get in line for a project behind ours. So this is kind of a continuum and a pipeline that we're trying to collectively as a community build for these families to come back, and our project is just one of the projects in the pipeline. So it's not the be-all and the end-all, but it's informational, and it's very specifically focused on trying to help people understand who Proud Ground is, how this project will operate, what the amenities will be, and to encourage people, if they, to share that information inside their organizations. We will also, once some of the work has been done with the Portland Housing, the Portland Development Center, Portland Housing Center, thank you. We will also, once we have a group of people that have shown some interest or expressed some interest, we want to do a small focus group, because this is going to be kind of a learning process for us all. I mean, right now in the pipeline, we have a few projects that are, I think Steve's got the first one, and then Proud Grounds behind is the next one in line. But these are condo projects, and families are used to coming back. You know, most of what Habitat has built in the past has been single-family homes. We don't have the land, or in these kinds of times and climate and in this community, to really be able to bring all the families back that want to come back into single-family homes. So if people want to come back, we've got to start helping to change people's expectations that condos are not going to be apartments. They're going to be, they're going to have different kinds of, we're looking very closely in our design process at the things that we know bother people about the stacked living arrangement, which is smells and sounds. And so we're looking at how do we insulate better, how can we upgrade the insulation so people, there's a lot of people at high incomes that have moved back into condos in the downtown area. We need to have, help change our community's expectations that that's a very viable option. And because these are large units, 2 and 3 bedroom units, I think it's important to start helping to educate the community to what the value of this is. So we would hope that we could sit down with some of those small groups, and before we're completely done designing the building, which is, is the next few months, we would be able to actually hear from people what they care about. We know from Diane, from Proud Ground's work in the past of having talked to families, preference families in the first stage of the process, that they do care about noise and smells and that whole notion of feeling like they're still living in an apartment. They bought a house, but now they feel like they're still in an apartment. We want to help change that perception and figure out what are the things that we can do internally that will perhaps help change people's perceptions. A large group, we expect at some point in the near future, we've met with the neighborhood association. We probably will do a larger group just to find out, to make people aware that this project's coming down the line, to hear from the community, from neighbors around the project, if they have any issues related to and things that they want us to pay attention to. Of course, we'll continue to attend the neighborhood association meetings. We will be holding an eco-charrette at some point. We've actually had a meeting with Earth Advantage, but so we know what we're targeting, but we will now, again, to try to align with people's expectations, we'll be involving some prospective buyers in that process. We do want to have a naming process. We haven't talked about what that would look like. I think part of us going through the community and having meetings with community stakeholders, we'll be raising that issue and seeing, how people would like to see that kind of a process unfold. And then we'll be presenting regularly to you as is required. The next page is just the community benefits. This obviously is a family-oriented, it's a mixed income, energy-efficient, transit-oriented, urban infill project. And as Diane mentioned, we are establishing an intentional community. So we are trying to create, both in terms of the commercial, we're not just looking for a minority business to go in there, we're looking for a minority business that can serve the families that are in there. So you don't want to just put a business that perhaps doesn't meet people's needs. So part of that outreach is to figure out what people want to see in their communities. What do they want to see close to them in terms of convenience and services, and see if we can work with Prosper to actually identify that kind of a user. The project engagement I've talked about a little bit. The project development, LMC is very well versed. They've done a number of affordable housing projects, worked many times under the city's construction diversity program, and they have a stable of folks that they work with regularly that are minority businesses that hire minority individuals. So we'll be looking to expand that. We're not just looking to, we're going to try to push the limit in all of these areas, but we will, that is built into the process. We have, I've already talked about the community commercial uses, and then we're committed to engagement at all points of the process. Probably what's most important about it is the subsidy that you guys are putting, the PHB is putting in this, is permanent. So these home ownership units will be permanently affordable. That's what the land trust allows us to do. It allows us to essentially, if somebody wants to sell, basically the next family that comes in there will be meeting the same kind of guidelines. So it provides us with a beginning portfolio of permanently affordable homeownership units. What has happened in the past when we built homeownership units in this community is that, once you sell it the first time, it's now back in the marketplace. And so you make that all at public investment in trying to get a low-income family in a house, and it gets one use, and then it's back into the marketplace. So we're, and that's good. It's good to get one use. But if we can, with the amount of money that we are trying to invest into affordable housing, and particularly related to ownership, if we can create a longer-term portfolio of affordable homeownership product that can cycle people through, that becomes, I think that should be an important objective, and that this project will do that. I think that's pretty much it. I want to just quickly cover the timeline. I know I'm talking probably longer than I should. The next page is the project schedule. We're pretty well through. We just submitted for design review in December. and land use and design review. We should be done with that in February if all things go well, towards the end of February. That'll be dependent upon how quickly the city responds back. And we just discussed this in our meeting today about what we need to do to get the clock ticking. And then the construction documents once we're through that, we'll start doing, final construction documents, start that process. The permitting process, and this is really all the city, it's not just permitting, but it's all the land use reviews. The reason December's in here is because that's when the clock starts ticking on the kind of permits and approvals we need to actually get final permits to start this project. And we're shooting for having those permits in November, and no later than November. And the same thing, the bidding will happen in probably the 3 months. That process will happen in the 3 months prior to that November date to coincide. The financing, of course, has to integrate with this. So we have one more large piece of gap financing that we're trying to secure. That's the Transportation-Oriented Development Grant. We will have our application in February, and we should know by April whether that piece of financing comes in. But we've raised significant dollars in the last year and a half to make this project possible, including the lift and about almost $230,000 in other grant dollars to make this project possible. Our construction financing obviously will determine, that has to be in place by the time we're ready to get our permits, to pull our permits. So we're working on that. We've already, Housing Development Center has already done some outreach to prospective lenders, and we'll be looking to try to get some feedback on their interest by April or May. And then we may have to secure a permanent loan for the commercial piece. All of the other projects will be, all of the other units in the condominium will be sold to homeowners, but the commercial space will be a separate condominium, and it may be available for a business to purchase, or we may hold it and lease it at an affordable rate, assuming that we get the kind of support and cooperation and collaboration that we need from Prosper to do that. We are looking at construction starting no later than December of this year. So we're pretty well right now on track for that to happen, assuming that the permit process goes as we've scheduled it. And then we expect to be substantially done in about February of 2021. So this is a 15-month construction project. It's 6 floors. And the certificate of occupancy, that's when we could start putting people in the building. The marketing sales, I can't stress to you how critical this piece is to a project like this. So we can't build a project when we don't control the pipeline, and we don't. PHB and the housing development, Portland Housing Center, sorry, really have to be the ones to create that pipeline. And, if they don't create a pipeline that allows us to fill those 40 units, then that's going to be a hardship that, on these nonprofits. And nonprofits like Proud Ground or any of the other nonprofits that are working with you as partners to put this product on the street have to have that pipeline. And typically, as a developer, you control your pipeline. We don't control the pipeline here. So we've got to have the kind of partnership and due diligence from our partner to make sure that those families are screened and forwarded over to us so we can work with them to get them, essentially mortgage ready. Because some of those families may take 15 months to get mortgage ready. So the sooner we have those families and know, what we're going to have to work with them to make them mortgage ready, the better off we are. So that process is, I know there's already been a number of discussions between the Bureau and Portland Housing Center and the partners trying to, get this next pool of folks ready. And then we expect to have the sales completed a year after the project is opened and on the ground.
And just to emphasize, these are our kind of last deadlines. We're hoping that we could accelerate along the way, but we'd rather over-deliver on that and undersell it, because these are our kind of benchmark deadlines, not what we really think will happen necessarily.
Well, they account for things that could happen
Yeah.
that would be out of our control, essentially. And then I'm not going to read the features. These are the features you can see. These are the design and sustainability features. All of the units are fully outfitted with utilities. They have washers, dryers, microwaves, and all the other things. We have, a play area in the back for smaller families. There's a park 2 blocks up the street that has all kinds of, Patton Park, that has basketball courts and open space and so forth for the larger kids. But, when you have small children, you want them to play in close proximity, and you may not have, they can't walk up to the park by themselves. So it's on light rail. We expect to design to gold standards, Earth Advantage gold standards, and
Excellent.
I think that's pretty much
Thank you.
everything that we have to tell you tonight.
Happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Questions and/or comments from the Oversight? Dr. Bethel.
Thank you. Diane, pardon me, I'll just call you Diane. You mentioned that there's going to be 16 parking spaces, none of those which are required. In Portland, parking is beyond premium, particularly when there are larger facilities or buildings built within a neighborhood. The impact on that parking, is considerable. So I would ask and would hope that when you're talking with the community, you will have some conversation about what will be the impact of this type of building being there and parking around the neighborhood for those who are already residents there.
Thank you, Dr. Bethel. And absolutely, our office is 2 blocks away, so I go there every single day. I'm very familiar with the area, and we do intend to have very serious conversations with the community members and prospective buyers about the parking issue, how to manage it, how to provide it to people with disabilities, with bigger families, with littler children, how to, really leverage those spaces. Some people in Portland would say now that no parking is the way to go on the light rail line. We didn't want to do that. We knew we'd already heard from our preference policy families that it was going to be something of an issue earlier on when we were talking about habitat projects. So we'll keep you posted on this one. I think you're tagging an important issue, and we'll be having very serious conversations about how to manage that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jillian.
Dr. Bethel asked one of the questions I had. I have a few technical questions, if you will indulge me. Do you know approximately the square footage of the 1-bedroom units that are going for market rate? Roughly?
700. About 700 square feet. Thank you.
And then, if you know do you know who your investor and construction lender will be?
Not
No,
yet.
we
Okay.
don't.
We're working on it.
Yeah, I think it's really important that since this is a lift project, and it's the new homeownership lift, that I would highly recommend working with a lender who's done a lift project before, because they are, the co-first position is confusing. And
Jillian, thank you for mentioning that. I've spent a lot of time in my advocacy work with the State Department on the lift requirements, and we're working with them about the requirements around the leasehold and the impact of the project on that. The truth is, this is the first homeownership project with lift funds of its kind ever.
Right.
So we're going to be, again, breaking new ground. I keep saying that, but we're But if we can find a lender that already knows what the lift requirements are for rental, maybe that could help us out. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate you guys being the tip of the spear on that one. So good luck. I think that was answered all my other questions. The commercial space. What's this? I didn't see the size of that
It's
space. Is it the
16, about
entire-
1,600 square feet.
So it's not the entire first floor.
No.
So will there be units on that first floor as well, along with the commercial
Yes, there will be.
space?
There's 4 units, 4 residential units on the first floor. And those units, we've designed them so that essentially they, you have walk-ups, at least on the interstate, so that it feels more private. In other words, we have planting beds, and you have a couple of stairs you walk up, so they're not, the door's not opening onto the sidewalk, a very busy sidewalk. We have a little bit more of a complication because of the right-of-way on Alberta. But we do have their setback, all the units are set back from, the property line, and have landscaping to buffer them from essentially the sidewalk. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lisa, Dr. Bates.
I have a question specific to this project, and then I sort of have a bigger picture question for Proud Ground and Habitat. My question specific to this project is, will there be a condo board that is governing this project? How do you plan to address sort of representation and equity within that board, and what is the relationship going to be between that entity and the larger Community Land Trust Board?
Let me describe, because I do want to defer to Gina a little bit about this too, because she's done more of the heavy lifting on the condo structure and anticipating condo fees, which are a very important component in the affordability calculation, because again, we include mortgage payments, condo fees, insurance, and taxes. Everything inclusive is considered when we consider affordability. When it comes to the condo board of directors, there's state law statutes that kind of dictate how that has to be structured. It's a very clear, well, not necessarily clear, but it's a very prescribed structure. We're anticipating that this will be obviously a very diverse building, and Proud Ground's role will be to essentially step out entirely after every unit is sold, unless we stay involved in the commercial unit as a leaser, and even then we'll play a very minor role. These are communities that are structured to really run themselves. They are self-managed communities, and we'll be assisting them with the long-range projections of the costs around the maintenance of the building. Condo fees are essentially a forced savings account for all the maintenance issues of the building. But I appreciate your question, and I think it's something we're going to want to take a good hard look at. If you want to add anything to that,
Dr. Bates, the condo association actually can only be made up of members who own a condo unit. So but basically, you have to, there is a lot of thinking that has to go into the rules and regulations. You do have some latitude in terms, there is law that governs what those rules and regulations have to cover, but you do have some latitude to how you structure the board, for example. I'll give you an example that I'm aware of, and then Steve Messanetti may be able to talk about this, because he has done condo associations with his townhome developments that are condominiums for affordable families, affordable ownership. But for example, at Vanport Square, which is a commercial condominium, so each of the small business owners owns their commercial condominium. One of the things that we did, you could structure voting, for example, for the condominium, so that each unit has a vote, or you can structure it by square footage. And what one of the things we purposefully did at Vanport was we made all of the minority owners were smaller owners. They own smaller spaces. So if we had structured it so that the size of the unit determined the weight of your vote, or whether you got more than one vote in any condominium matter, the majority owners would have actually controlled exactly what could and couldn't happen in the condo association. So you have to think through who is your population, what kind of equity are you trying to ensure, and then you have to structure your board in a way that's going to give that the best opportunity to occur. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but.
So my concern is this. I mean, yes, obviously the condo board is structured by owners and I guess it self-manages. I mean, I guess I'm very unclear on what is the ultimate, this is still part of the land trust, right? So.
Let me explain that. Our relationship at Proud Ground is with each individual buyer, and that relationship has to do with our assistance to them to be sure that they can manage the unit and really leave them alone. They're like every other homeowner on earth, except when they decide to sell. And then we step in and assist them with that process. Besides that, we don't own the land underneath this condo. We don't hold it in that kind of classic community land trust sense. It's all the affordable housing management is done through affordability covenants, which are essentially deed restrictions. So we're stepping away from the management of this building entirely, and it really is, a condo really is a self-managed community, and we will not have anything to say over what they do with the building in the future.
So the ownership of the land is going to the condo association.
Well, in this case, it's atypical because the state of Oregon is requiring us to have a land lease under the building. It's complicated. We have to work with the city of Portland on the land issues, and we've got some attorneys working together on that. But the one thing I can tell you is Proud Ground will not own the land after every condo is sold. And normally, the land is held in common among all the owners of the units.
Dr. Bates,
Is that going to be the end result, Diane?
Yes.
In the end, the condo owners will own the land in common.
Unless the state of Oregon maintains their position that there'll be a land lease held by the state of Oregon, or the city of Portland owns the land because of the 99-year lease, which we're trying to work out.
Okay, so the question that I'm really trying to get at is, in other cities where they have programs, for example, to cooperatize buildings, there is some work to educate, resource, and provide capacity for tenants to be able to do this. Absent that, you will have, I think, almost inevitably a situation in which your market rate owners become the condo board, and they will govern the building because they will have the most likely to have the knowledge, professional experience, confidence, et cetera, to take on this role. And so what comes into place to address that issue, which is institutionalized discrimination? That's what it is.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we have about 20 condominiums that we've developed over the past 10 years, anywhere from smallest or 5 units, the largest is 45 units. Ours are not mixed income, so we don't have experience with that diversity. What we do have a lot of experience with is training those buyers to be successful leaders of their condominium. And we spend the first 6 months putting them through trainings, working with them to elect their leadership. And also important to really note is that there is a condo management company that they hire that's part of their condo fees that guides all of their processes. And that's there with them along the way. And we use the same company for most of ours who has cultural sensitivity and experience with working with diverse communities. The mixed income component of this, I think, is an issue that we need to be aware of and continue to, I don't know if that gets kind of legislated in those condo documents to some extent, or is just obviously, they decide, they make their decision.
You should legislate some things about that in your documents. If you don't have experience with a mixed income governance program, and the condo management company also does not have experience with this range, which I'm for, it's great. but it will default to the default of our society in the absence of an intentional design to not default.
Hear you loud and clear on that.
So
Dr. Bates. We'll make sure that.
this drives to my
addressed.
other bigger picture question. So I'm going to ask again. I don't know that you'll have these numbers, but I've asked this previously. If you can please present the information about your organizations with a racially disaggregated outcomes. We keep obscuring into people of color reporting. That's not the practice of the city anymore. We talk about racial specificity, and we have a particular mandate here to talk about a place and a race-based history of segregation, exclusion, and discrimination that we're trying to drill down on. So we really need to hear about how the organizations are working with African American people and families and the success metrics that you have developed around that. Because what I want to know in this, and this goes for all of the partner organizations, how is this work in this strategy being taken on board into your organizations? How is this transformative of your understanding, yourselves, your staff, your boards? Not with massive respect to Ms. Woolley, and everything that you've outlined here sounds wonderful, and you do not work as a permanent staff member at either of these organizations. So how does it get taken on board by the people, the board and staff who are there every day to transform and address implicit bias and institutionalized racism inside your organizations and pivot your organizations to be capable of addressing structural racism that is deeply affecting to all of this work in housing? Like, what's the transformation? And so that it concerns me when I hear that there isn't a very clear and explicit anticipation and a plan for a condo board that will involve race and class dynamics. That says to me, wait, are you yet thinking about institutionalized and structural discrimination in the work that you do?
Let me just say that as far as Prog Ground's concerned, what we'll provide to you, Dr. Bates, is we've been doing a lot of research about not only our current portfolio of home owners, but also our waitlisted families. We're breaking down detailed questions. 2 members of my team went to PSU for an extensive training to do the assessments of what the barriers are for people of color in our program. I can give you our equity assessment tool that we're using that addresses every single component of what we do all day, every day. I'd love to share with you the dynamics and the demographics of our board of directors. That's very diverse, and we're making improvements on our staff, on our internal workforce of 8 people. We're a small but mighty team. But this, I think your question is very fair, and I think we'd like to follow up directly with you to show you the kind of research we're doing internally to figure out how we can be better and better at this. Your point about the condo associations is well taken. It's something that's a little farther down the road, but I think it's good to hear now that we need to make sure that it's integrated into our plans.
And I think that what we can do when we get closer to actually structuring that. I mean, we have a ton of other work that we've got to get done just to keep the project moving. But when, in a few months, when we get ready to work, we've worked out all of our land issues with our lenders, and what the structure is going to look like, that will, we can't do any of the condo stuff until that's all done, because all of that has to flow all the way through the condominium documents. But I think we could come back to you and talk to you. This is going to be the first of its kind. So there's going to be a lot of learning to be done, and I think your points are right on. And so I think that I'm going to be involved working with the lawyers, and Diane, I'll be intricately involved in this aspect of the work. But I think we can bring things back to you and show you what we're doing when we get a little bit further down the road, if that would be of interest to you.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's great. I mean, I think that I don't want to receive this personally. I want to receive it to this venue.
Yeah.
And I want to hear it, again, with respect, Diane. I want to hear about Black folks. I want to hear not about barriers for POC. I want to hear about what you are learning in your research, what your staff are learning, how your programs are changing. What concrete changes are you making in your programs in realizing that they may not be serving Black people? Right? Like very, very specifically and deeply, because you've had this opportunity to engage, you have other partners, you have this opportunity to work with preference families who have experienced displacement, who have experienced a very particular history and legacy. We have, and again, this is not unique to these organizations. There's many nonprofit partners. I want to know the same thing. I mean, in the big picture, hundreds of years, but let's just keep it breezy and say, since post-war era, an entire housing system that has been intentionally and explicitly designed to exclude African Americans in a very particular way. It excludes other people of color too, but there's a very specific way and set of mechanisms and histories here. And if we don't intentionally and explicitly design from jump to do the reverse, we're not gonna get there. And so I just, like, again, when I see stats that say POC, like, all right, fine, tell me about how this is working for Black folks. And
We can do
I want to know that about the work at large.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Bates. Jillian, and then Felicia.
I remembered the question, I forgot. So you mentioned several times the pipeline, and that typically, you're totally correct, that the developer manages the pipeline. In fact, usually before you break ground, you have a certain percentage that your lender requires to be pre-sold. So my question is that a possibility to pre-sell some of these units? And what can we do as a committee to help you with that? Because I am personally concerned that a lender will not make a construction loan if half the units aren't pre-sold.
Well,
I think that'll be a struggle.
Technically, we can't pre-sell condos. We have to have 50% of the units on contract before we can close on the first one. At the same time, this is a mixed bag, because we do have preference policy families that have been working for quite some time already. And this is the second round technically, right? The first round's already, and the condos, Habitat's building and PCRI are building, are serving the first round. So we've got a couple years here to really prep people and help them be ready, see who's coming, see what their issues are, try to overcome barriers and get people in line. And we're starting now to do that. You can help by helping support PHB and helping support PHC to really just keep the process moving. And we're meeting collectively together, Habitat, Proud Ground, PSC, the team, to kind of figure out what we need to do to have a smooth process of referral and pick people up and make sure we're making progress as aggressively as we can, as early as we can. Because you're right, we've got to have buyers lined up in order to make this project work.
I mean, usually you take, a minimal deposit, and there's, it's, right, you can't execute a contract, but
we really can't do that, but we can. I mean, there's a couple, I would just add, creative solutions that are sitting on the back burner around lease to own and maybe some other things that are possible to keep, to move people in.
Well,
thank you.
Please do keep us updated on that, and yeah.
Awesome.
Felicia.
So, Diane, I'm going to address maybe in a different way what Lisa's trying to bring up. So this morning, Karen and I were with Legacy Hospital this morning with the new president of Legacy. And the new president brought out all these things they're doing in communities of color. And the response back from several of the African American leaders was like, that's great, but what are you doing in the African American community? And then they went back, and the frame or the context they came back again was people of color. And finally, the person that was program director at the county said, let me be really, really clear. In the social determinants of health, African Americans are at the very, very bottom in the following categories. So because of that, that's why we keep asking you almost like a parrot, what are you doing with African Americans? So what Lisa's really trying to get at, if I'm assuming, is what specifically is the plan and implementation within the land trust, not just for Olin, Kilpatrick, 5020, but overall within the organization to address African Americans in a very culturally specific way. What are you going to do not to lump them in with Latinos, not to lump them in with Native Americans, not to lump them in with Asians? And one of the things if I would recommend anybody look at is look at the county's social determinants of health, because it's a real indication about how things are very, very different. Another thing a lot of you guys know is Portland Public Schools just came out with its audit finding. The audit finding was requested actually by the African American community because, again, PPS was lumping African American kids with people of color. Well, surprise, surprise, what did the study find out? African American kids, the achievement gap is at a greater rate than any other group. And so that's the reason why she's asking it and framing it in that way, trying to get this conversation, because the preference policy is really geared towards that. So that's all. So next time it's really like, what are you looking like? Not that you have this many African Americans on staff or this many people on your board, but what are the systems within the land trust of Proud Ground that you're doing to really address this very, very specific population?
Yeah. Felicia, thank you for that. I would just say that we can show you the aggregate amount of homes sold to African Americans, especially single mothers. We have that in our data. We'll pull that out. We'll bring it to you. We brought it a couple of years ago in very early conversation. It kind of got buried in under other conversations. We want to bring that information to you. This project is about serving African Americans in the context of the preference policy on the National Ground Solutions Network Board. Our diversity work is around the condition of African Americans and the egregious history behind that. We can address that very specifically, and especially for this project, because it is so much about serving the African American community.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're going to stop here, and I would add that what Dr. Bates is saying and what Felicia is saying isn't limited to Proud Grounds conversation or Habitat. It is very specifically directed to all of our partners. This is the information that we're concerned about. So we want to know how the concern that we've addressed is affecting strategic development and change. So thank you very much. We will be hearing from you, I'm sure, many more times. So
Thank you all very much for your work.
appreciate it. We've extended the time just because the information was so necessary for us to talk about at this point. Leslie Goodlow. is going to join us to talk about the URA discussion. And also very important, because at the end of this discussion, we are being asked to make a recommendation. So, Ms. Goodlow.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm going to go through this quickly. Most of this you have seen before. Let me get to my first slide. We got, am I going the wrong way? Yes, sorry. Okay. So this first slide is just a review of the rental projects that we have funded to date out of the Interstate URA. Shannon already briefed you on the status of the projects and where they are, but as you can see, we have either already opened or under construction or soon to be under construction, a total of 503 units at $40 million, which is about 100 more units than we would have expected to get out of 40 million, because it costs about $100,000 per unit. So we are ahead of the goal of what we thought we were going to have. This next slide you all saw at the either the November or the December meeting, where we talked about units under construction for home ownership. We do have a number of units. We have a goal of 110 homeowners with these particular units. We, as discussed before, PCRI has approximately 20 units that they're building, and we're hoping that some number of those will go to preference policy families. This next slide you saw in July, and I know it's hard to read on the screen, so I'm going to talk you through the boxes. That first box, we had set aside $6 million for land banking. We are currently under a PSA with which is a purchase and sale agreement for a piece of property within the district. Once we have completed an appraisal and finalized that agreement, then we will be able to share with you where that property is. The second box where it says reserve for projects underway, those funds went to cover the gap for the Argyle project and for King Parks. The first box on the bottom talks about the Water Bureau property purchase, and then the development and what we would put on that property, which is 50 to 70 home ownership units, depending upon what we decide what that development looks like, whether it be townhomes, whether it be flats, whether it be some combination of those two. The second box is a yet-to-be-determined rental development, which would be somewhere between 45, I think I have 48 units, but somewhere between 45 and 50 units for that $6 million. The third box is the property that we're purchasing, that we have under the purchase and sale agreement right now. And we are looking to put somewhere between 120 and 176 units. And that could be either rental or home ownership or some combination of the two with those dollars. And then the last box is, again, another yet to be determined rental or home ownership project of approximately 60 units. So the reason why I'm here today to talk to you is to discuss the inclusion of the Cary Boulevard property into the URA. Does this have a? Okay, so I don't know if everybody can see this little dot. The green up here is the end of the URA, and over on this side, the URA is over here, and this is the property that we purchased. So this line from the URA over here to the property is the connection from the URA to the property. And that line is drawn so that there's no impacts to either commercial or residential, because it will basically go down the street. It'll be in the street and not connecting to the block. So the properties on either side at this point, unless there's some discussion about including those, would not be included in the URA. You can see how close it is to the end of the URA. It's just a couple blocks away for us to be able to include it. So before I go to the recommendation, I know that was very fast. Does anybody have any questions?
Leslie, how big is the Water Bureau property? How many acres is it?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
Yeah, that's where the goats are.
That's where the goats are right now. Yes, the Belmont goats are now living on the Cary Boulevard property. I don't know if there's any.
Okay.
Okay, just under 3 acres.
And again, total number of units that are available?
Potentially, depending upon how we build, that would be, go back to my, 50 to 70.
Thank you.
So
Dr. Bates.
this property is on the, is in this one of these blue boxes?
Yes, it's the first blue box on the bottom.
But what are these other rental developments?
They're-
Those
they're-
have properties identified?
No, those are yet to be determined projects that we would either do a NOFA for or, well, let me just say, one of them would be the property that we're in a purchase and sale agreement with now. So that would be the third box.
Yep.
So the third box is the property that we're in contract to purchase now.
Got it.
The first box is the Water Bureau property. The other two boxes are yet to be determined projects that we could do with those dollars. So we took a guesstimate of how much money two more projects would cost, and how many units we could do with those dollars, based on about $125,000 per unit that we figure it would cost in a couple years when we would be doing these developments.
And so the ask tonight is?
So the ask tonight is, as you know, we will have to get approval from Prosper Portland's board. We are requesting a minor amendment, which would require you as our oversight committee to make the recommendation to Prosper Portland's board to include the Water Bureau property within the URA. That would allow us to use some existing TIF to cover the cost of the purchase from the Water Bureau, and it would already be within the URA if and when, hopefully when, we finalize maximizing the indebtedness of the URA either later this year or next year.
Thank you very much. Questions? Anyone for? Go ahead, Jillian.
If this is not added into the URA, will PHB still be able to purchase the property?
Yes, we can purchase it, but we will not have the funds to develop it anytime soon, so it would basically just be land banked property.
Thank you.
What you have being passed around is the determination on the recommendation to include the property that has just been described into the URA. We are not at the position at this moment where I'm asking for a vote, but your vote will be captured in writing, and then we will tally it up and make it known as to whether or not it was a yes or a no. This is what that sheet is. So other questions?
Can I ask a question? This is not, my vote is not conditioned on this question, but I'm just wondering if you can describe for us, what are the conditions under which the Water Bureau or other of the bureaus are selling land to the Housing Bureau? Like, it is a market appraisal rate, it is a below market rate, like what are their disposition requirements?
Well, first of all, I believe it was approximately 3 years ago, we revised the rules at the city to ensure that the Housing Bureau had the first option to purchase parcels that were declared surplus by any particular bureau. This would be the second purchase that we would have made from one of our partner bureaus since that point. The first was a property on 60th and Belmont in the Mount Tabor neighborhood owned by Parks. A very, very old elementary school. I can't remember the name. It's long been closed, but it's now acting as a YMCA daycare center. And this is the second purchase from the Water Bureau. The terms of those are frankly usually at the market valuation, but it's particularly the Water Bureau and BES, as you may know, they have mandates because they are run with ratepayer dollars, and they are not allowed to discount properties that were purchased with your funds that you're paying the Sewer and Water Bureau. And so that's very technical. This is a very good purchase price for this property. It gives us an opportunity that we haven't seen really, the ability to do 50 to 70 new homes in a not a strict multifamily, kind of the development we saw with Proud Ground is just very rare. And so we have not yet, we have agreed to purchase the property, and the Water Bureau has given us the opportunity to pay on contract, as it were. We have a couple of additional years before we have to turn money over to them. But it is a much more simplified process for us to purchase than any other entity purchasing land in a city surplus. So it's a, you know, they do have to do some cost recovery, though, so.
Any questions specifically to Leslie as it relates to the information presented? Or do we feel like we're adequately prepared to make determination in response to the recommendation? Okay, then I'm going to ask you to put your name down and to identify your position, yes or no. You don't have to say it. You're just going to write it on the paper. The recommendation. Oh, okay. You're frowning at me. No. And then we'll pass them in, Sawyer, if you will capture them. It's a secret ballot. We will let everyone know whether or not it was yes or no. Thank you, Leslie, for your presentation. Appreciate it.
Sawyer, can you get the rest, collect the rest of them?
Thank you very much. Are you going to tally them?
Yes.
Okay. If you collect them.
Yes, you may. There you go. Thank you.
And while they're doing that, shouldn't take too long. We're going to make a little adjustment in our time tonight. The next item, which is for the committee to have a discussion around our annual report, and also for us to have a discussion in relationship to new committee members.
Everyone voted yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up instead to public comment and give us 20 minutes to have those public comments, and we will end with our discussion on annual report and new members. If there are any persons who are here tonight who would like to have public comment, here's your opportunity. Hopefully, I don't know that we have any cards. If we have any individuals who filled out cards, I guess is what I should say.
Thank you.
All right.
Oh, okay.
And no public comments, am I correct? Oh, you had one. Okay, you're filling out the card. Well, look, I'll give you some moments to do that. Very good. And the tally has been made. The recommendation was to include the property in the URA. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Oh, it's a great thing. Ownership opportunities, it's a great thing.
Ask you and all other, just change that from Reverend. Doctor?
Yes, sir.
So again, we're going to give about 20 minutes for public comment at this time. So you can fill your card out later. If you want to come forward, we'll give you some opportunity to do so. I'll let you identify your name, and we will go from there. Oh, thanks if you have them. Thank you very much. He said it. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. So, are you going to together, or is it going to be individual? Going to tag team?
3 minutes and I'll take the.
Okay, we'll give you 3 minutes. It's on you. Introduce yourself, madam,
Okay.
and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I'm Linda Tellis Kennedy from PCRI, the Homeownership Program Coordinator, or one of. I just wanted to, the last meeting that we had in December, was a result, I thought, from my comments in November, or from the previous meeting when you said, we'll do a special one in December to address these issues. It's been over a year now that I'm saying the same issue, and it still hasn't been addressed because it wasn't able to be addressed in that meeting because things went another way and they needed to. But I just don't want to keep saying the same thing and it's still not addressed. It's been over a year. And that's just my concern for the community as well as just us who are doing the work. I really depend on the Oversight Committee to look at the communication that's being had between the partners or just the struggles or anything that's happening with us getting these homes built or anything concerning the community or the preference policy folks that we're working with. But it's not, I don't know why it's not getting heard. So I just want to kind of, like I said, I'm glad it went the way it did because things needed to be said that were said that night. But as far as what I've been bringing up, it hasn't. So one of the issues that was raised was the increased DPAL resources of $80,000 to $100,000 for home buyers in the open market and $100,000 to $125,000 for the new construction development. It was brought to the attention of the committee that there was a discrepancy in what was presented to them by PHB and subsequently approved by the committee. In a letter from Mayor Wheeler, the increase from 100 to 125 was for newly constructed permanent affordability housing. As I understood it, a few of the committee members were unable to recall there being a difference highlighted in the proposal. The committee then recommended PHB and PCRI meet to discuss in greater detail and come to a resolution. A resolution has not been reached, and to date, no further discussion has been had. The benefit of the DPAL program is the ability to bridge the gap for first-time homebuyers in a high-cost housing market, thereby creating affordable homeownership opportunities. PHB explained because it is in the investor in the construction of the unit developed by Habitat and Proud Ground that they are able to verify the need for the increase in DPAL. The assumption PCRI supposes is its housing development costs are not verifiable without PHB as the lender. PCRI chose not to use city resources to finance the construction of the homeownership units. Rather, we elected to use private financing in order to get more homes built each year and to get them built faster. We believe our homeownership initiative and its relationship with the public resources should be between the home buyer and the city of Portland. And the home ownership process would be best served as a source of down payment assistance awarded directly to the home buyer and not be required to go into the construction of the home. PCRI's fast-track production schedule makes it necessary to construct at least 60 to 80 homes each year to sell to displaced households. PCRI's homeownership construction and home buying process would be better served by using private financing for construction and public resources for down payment assistance. Each organization has its way of operating. There is no one way to produce the homes to be sold. PHB's position is that they are unable to verify the needs for the increase in DPAL for PCRI homebuyers because they are not involved in the construction process. We have provided on a number of occasions information on our development costs, residents' income verifications, and projected mortgages of the prospective homebuyers slated to purchase them, demonstrating the need for the amount of down payment assistance required. With the current check and balance system, it is impossible to misstate these costs. This is clearly PHB penalizing PCRI, ultimately the home buyers, for opting not to use PHB financing for the construction of the homes. The community does not understand the rationale behind this decision. They have been asking and deserve an explanation. The current decision is not an equitable decision. It is our belief that PHB must provide equitable across access to public funds for all prospective homebuyers selected by its preference policy, and PCR, I believe it's the role of the Oversight Committee to hold them accountable in doing so.
Good evening. My name is Andrea Debnam, also with PCRI. And just to really reiterate, before our last special meeting, and I'm not sure if all of you have had an opportunity, but we sent really a timeline of different issues that have not really been addressed. And I think not at anyone's fault around this table. I just think there's a lot of things that have come up in these meetings that we just haven't come back to, probably for a number of reasons. And we just thought it was really important that we really take a look at a number of decisions, a number of issues that I think we need to come back to and address. So that's really the premise of what we are saying here. And I think for the best interest of this community, unless you all have all the information, we are just not positioned to best serve this community, not knowing all of the things and addressing all of the things that continue to come forth. So one of the other areas of concern, I think, and was something we addressed before, was the decision by the Housing Bureau to select the Portland Housing Center as the lead agency to become the organization to assess all incoming prospective home buyers through this preference policy. And all due respect to my colleagues at the Portland Housing Center, we have been partners for a number of years, so this is not anything against them, but I think it's just important to talk about how that process occurred and the confusion, I think, and the frustration that is caused for people in this particular process. I think from the beginning of this process, PHB made a commitment to the community and this committee that what they believe were reasonable expectations around timelines, participants would be mortgage ready to purchase a home. I think we've talked about that several times. And I believe it was done without real consideration for those of us who do this work on a consistent basis, and particularly this organization who has worked in this community with the African American community and understands what it takes to prepare them for first-time home ownership. I think we were met with unreasonable expectations, and we didn't stop and allow a process to adjust those projections. And as I believe it was a response, I think initially to this committee's concern about the lack of homeowners to date at that particular time, and your report that went to council about, why don't we have so many homeowners produced at this point? And so I believe that was the Bureau's response to you all and your concerns about just the progress at that point. And so I think from then, I don't think we've really addressed, or the Bureau has really addressed, that there was a goal and a plan that really wasn't properly executed, and instead, I believe it put additional pressure on us as housing organizations to and put fault, I think, and place blame on us and not meeting, I think, what were unreasonable expectations. And I think we found them to be counterproductive and just not a good way to move forward, and I think have put just us as housing organizations and colleagues in an unfortunate position in relationship with one another, which is not necessary. I think PCRI is more than capable and have in supporting people becoming mortgage ready. We've been doing this work for 15 years in this community, specifically as it relates to the African American community, and I think there could have been a better way to approach this. Now participants, for example, are being told, I'll be done in 1 second, that they must work with the Bureau, Portland Housing Center, in order to go through this process. Many of them that have been working with this organization and preparing themselves for homeownership for a while, and it's causing some confusion and some frustration. So to begin a process all over again, when at one point in this process, they were told that if they're already working with the organization, they would not have to start again. So there's just some issues I think we really have to talk about, which I know was the purpose of that meeting. Correct. And I just don't want this, again, as we continue to move forward and we're talking about another round and another round.
Correct.
There's still people in this process that need to be taken care of and that need to be served and need to be served well. So it is our real hope that we're able to get together again.
Absolutely.
I hope
So-
that timeline that we shared is distributed to this group, and we can really break down all of those pieces, and I think things that we have not resolved as a group, and maybe information you all do not have, and really come to some resolution so we can best serve this community.
So to both of you, and I appreciate it, the items have not been lost.
Okay.
The private meeting, the closed session, went in a direction that it went, and some of the items that we had intended to address, we did not. However, it doesn't mean they shall not be addressed. And I think, Shannon, you were going to address, I think, the first part. Director Callahan, you were going to address the first part of what Linda mentioned tonight. However, I need to frame it in this regard. While I want to give you an opportunity to address it, we are not going to try to hammer all of the pieces out at this particular time.
Not intended.
We do and we will address all of these things and do our best to come to some clear pathway forward with how best to service our community, the people that we want and care about to benefit from these services. So, yep. So thank you, ladies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Holden. Thank you, Linda and Andrea. I don't intend to go through kind of a whole detail because there's not a lot of, I think more discussion needs to be had. I will say, though, that communication has broken down between PCRI and the Housing Bureau in a major way on this issue. We've had some dialogues and conversations, and frankly, PHB doesn't feel like we're able to get the information that we need to be able to talk about the families on the preference policy list or your plans for construction. I have offered facilitated discussions between PCRI and PHB just because I feel like we have not been able to for some reason, we haven't been able to reach a mutual understanding of each other's needs and interests going forward to make sure that this program is really successful. I would again recommend that we try to have a facilitated discussion amongst PCRI staff and PHB staff to work out some of these issues. And without going into much more detail, that is really my best recommendation at this point, because I feel like we're, for some reason, not able to get through some of what I think are being able to hear each other's issues and what you need to do your work successfully and what PHB needs as a government partner that has to provide transparency to our oversight committee, to our council, and being accountable. And so, we want to be able to move forward, but we need to be able to have discussions. And I don't say that with any disrespect to PCRI. I'm saying that is somehow we need to get through this together. So, that's really my commitment. And I'm happy to do whatever work you want to do as an oversight committee, of course. But I also think there's some really technical details we need to have discussions about, and I would be willing to bring in a facilitator that to have a discussion that we can kind of go through issue-oriented and hopefully work through where we want to go together. And it could be a facilitator or mediator that was comfortable and for PCRI and comfortable for the Housing Bureau. But I feel, frankly, that that we need to get some base understandings, and I don't have an understanding of where PCRI is in the process right now. So,
thank you very much. And I would say that our commitment is to do that sooner than later, so we don't have another expanded time where we've got this limbo. So, Jillian, and then we're going to move to our next topic. Thank you.
thank you both for reminding us of the issues that are going on. I think I understand where Andrea is coming from, but Linda, I wanted to ask you specifically what you see the ideal outcome as being. What I'm hearing you say is that there's a feeling of injustice that one group is getting more subsidy than another group. Mm-hmm. Is that an accurate summary? So what would be your best possible outcome from this process of discussion? What is the ask, I guess?
What you all voted on happens, which was an increase on all new development to be 125. It's needed just like it is for anybody else developing. And I thought that was the purpose of it being 125 instead of 100,000 is because it's a new development. Mm-hmm. The way we use it shouldn't be the issue, but that doesn't even matter for the person that's benefiting from it, right? So
perfect.
It's definitely needed.
Thank you very much, ladies. We appreciate it. Thank you. And everyone who's been here up to this point, we thank you. We appreciate your presence and your energy. We are now going to do something that, and the reason why I wanted to save this to the last, I don't know if Mr. Posey is still here. Is he already gone? He's gone. Well, in our last meeting, he made mention of private conversation among the group and how it feels that we are excluding the community. I normally open with this statement. I'm going to close with this statement. This is a meeting that is open to the public. It is not a public meeting. A public meeting would be that those who are in the audience, you are the focal point of the meeting. The meeting that is open to the public means that you get to sit in on the meeting of the Oversight Committee. And so we are doing the work of the Oversight Committee. It is not to exclude anyone. It is to give you the opportunity to have a bird's eye view and hear the process, be engaged in a public process with how decisions are made. And so at this point, we are going to talk about our annual report, which is significant. We are also going to talk about new members being potentially engaged and who those new members are. And so I thought we'd give the opportunity for the public comment so as not to have you wait until the end to be able to do that as we have some dialogue around our annual report and potential new members. Very briefly, let's talk a little bit about our potential new members. You have a list in front of you, and Director Callahan is chuckling because one of those potential persons I'm recommending to be considered is our former Commissioner, Dan Saltzman, who spoke to me and said, use me, use me, use me if you see opportunities for me to be engaged and involved. And he is no longer an elected official, so I'm recommending him as a potential member of the Oversight Committee. I think many of you are familiar with his work. The other is Sharon Gary Smith, and you've got some information on who Sharon Gary Smith is. And then you have John Washington. And John Washington is a businessman who has been involved in a variety of things here in the city for a few years. Any comment, question, feedback on the names that have been presented in front of you?
I don't have any questions about the specific names. I guess more like the process that we're undertaking right now. Are we increasing the total number of people that are on the Oversight Committee? Are people exiting the Oversight Committee? And then I guess my question about these people is like, are they, I assume they know they're on this paper.
I have spoken with them, yes.
Okay, so everyone is like, yeah, I would like to do that thing.
Two are yeah, one is maybe, we'll see. Then Sharon.
So, so it's an invitation to them.
It's an invitation to them
to join.
To join. And we have never had a full Oversight Committee based on our original charter and the numbers that we have. We are, because of new
So we have capacity for 13 on the OC, and we've never made it to that number. And so this is an opportunity for us to fill the 3 vacant spots on the committee.
I don't have a question, I have a comment. We have difficulty making quorum, just in general sometimes for our meetings. Will adding more people make it more of a barrier, Leslie, to make quorum? It's just more of a logistical question. I don't know. It seems like for some of our meetings, it's kind of like, we haven't met quorum yet. We haven't met quorum while we sit here. So I just want to say if adding more people will be a barrier, because I want to make sure for all these projects and everything that we can actually vote on them, so we don't delay the people working on these projects. That's it.
So at this point, we either we would have to change the charter. The number was increased from 11 to 13 when we did the TIF lift and included North Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And so there would have to be a move to change the charter, and the mayor would then need to reapprove the charter for us to reduce the number and not fill those spots. The Office of, what's their new name? Civic Life. Office of Civic Life and the City Council have made some significant changes to advisory committees, advisory boards, and due to those changes, if we or you all don't, this is your opportunity to choose who you want based on the skill sets that you're looking for versus applications coming through the Office of Civic Life and the open application process that will be on their website. They're aware that there are 3 vacancies on this committee, and probably within the next few months, if the positions aren't filled, we will be instructed to process those applications and to fill the spots that way. So there's 2 options. We request to change the number back down to 11 through the mayor's office, or we go on ahead and fill the spots and hope that we always have 7.
Oh, okay. So
Great question.
who did we lose?
We've never had the full 11.
Oh, okay.
And you remember there were early on Sarah Zahn and Katrina and
Yep.
some other, yeah. Any comments? No.
Well, I guess one more is, how do
Yeah.
we vet people? Like, how do you determine who to ask? I'm just curious. They're great, but
The individuals that are on this list are individuals who have either, except Sharon, with the exception of Sharon, they have either been engaged, involved in issues specifically related to this oversight committee for the past several years. Commissioner Saltzman himself, of course, having been the commissioner that put each of us in place, et cetera. And then Sharon Gary Smith, who's just been involved in a variety of community-led, community-engaged processes for the benefit of the city over several decades. So a personal relationship. All right, I'll encourage you then to,
we have to fill this thing out, right?
yeah, if you put your name down and you've got the option to say yes or no for each individual. And again, another silent process. We'll take a few moments and we're going to talk about our annual report. We are at the time again of our annual report, and I'm going to ask you, after you fill out your ballot recommendation, excuse me, if you will look through the annual report, take a few moments and look through the annual report.
Oops, sorry. Reggie, this is for you. Pass those down.
Thank you again.
This is the old one. I asked the same thing. It's the old one.
So, yes, what you have is a copy of the report that was presented to council last March, and it's just to give you an idea, so you have some, to renew your memory of what was presented, and to give you an opportunity to think about what kinds of things you would like in this year's report, based on those categories or other items that have been discussed throughout this last calendar year. Additionally, and I may have mentioned this before, the Portland Housing Bureau will be doing an annual report from us that will have all the data of everything that we did for Northeast during the calendar year. So that will be the data that you'll be able to use that's current, that is in this report, but you'll have all of the benchmarks, all of the data, and that will be ready sometime after mid-January, so sometime between next week and the end of January. And so we are projecting to be able to go to council late February or early March with your annual report.
So the first thing I would ask you to identify as you peruse it, are there any specific things that you think need to really be highlighted in this year's coming report? So are there any specific things, as you again peruse this, look through it, are there things that we want to make sure we capture that we talk about? Secondly, and or even from the report that is captured, stuff that we want to again speak to, something that hasn't been answered, something that's still lingering, something that we want to make sure that we're speaking to. So anything that hasn't been highlighted that we think needs to be highlighted from the activities of 2018, if there's something from the report of 2017 that still needs to be talked about. And then lastly, my question would be for any of the Oversight Committee members who would like to be a part of helping to craft and or draft this report and then present it to council. For the last several years, I have presented with Dr. Bates. Ms. Vergie was kind enough to present one year with us in our annual report, and so I'm asking for other Oversight Committee members who would like to participate in that process. So.
Are you looking for volunteers now?
Yeah, if you'd like to, if you know you're ready.
So, I don't want to present. I want to say that first, but.
Did you say you don't?
No. Yes. I said it loud and clear, no. But I do want to, help redesign this. I think one of the things I would like is more graphic design and visuals this year for council, because one of the things for council members is they get what I call high-level information, but the reading level detail, which a lot of this is, they don't necessarily all do. And I think this year's annual report, because there are some successes, great successes in 2018, is I think we should really highlight the development that opened this year with pictures and photos. And I think that the annual report would really look great with, and I'll just give you some examples in our little report here that I think, and that's why I said I'm willing to help, I'm not just making these suggestions, is like, just like what Shannon and everybody else said, that we had open, this year we have Beatrice Morrow, we have Charlotte Rutherford, we have New Meadows. I think instead of just saying it, I think the visuals for council, because the ones that are not part of Northeast Oversight, I think also on the home ownership end, to actually highlight with a customer story of how the preference policy money actually helped them. I think that detail to the annual report, because when we look at annual reports, it's really about highlighting the successes. And I'm not saying not to say the things that we need to improve on or recommendations, but the recommendations being more like, this is where we're moving into the future. And so that's a recommendation, because this report is extremely text heavy. And there's nothing wrong with it, I want to be clear, but I think for 2018, we can pare that down, and because we actually have developments that are actually completed, and let's take advantage of that with graphic design and storytelling. Because I think council would really appreciate that as well, and so that's my feedback, and I'm willing to help.
Thank you.
I can even give you
That's
the,
good
I can
stuff.
even give you the name of a graphic designer that will help us put this together.
That's excellent. Dr. Bates?
Sorry, I went to the restroom, but when is this report, when is the presentation of the report, and how does that align with or not align with the budget direction and develop thing that was talked about in the very beginning?
There are revolving dates for direction to develop going all the way up until, I don't want to quote the exact date, I think it may actually be April 4th, but all the way through for sure in March. Last year you presented in March, late March, I believe. This year, the reason that you like to do a calendar year report, we traditionally are a fiscal year, which is a July to a June at the city. So we adapt our reporting, to make sure you have everything. And some of our contractors are still working on their reporting all the way up till January 30th, but we can refine. That would just be home repair grants, for instance, to make sure we know everything that's happening. But I'd imagine we're trying to get you a date in February. If possible, the mayor's office is actually in charge of scheduling our requested items, so we would work with the mayor's office and the oversight committee to find a date that worked best for you. But I think to answer your question, short answer, I think as long as you're in you complete your report to council by March, there will still be time for a direction to develop.
Yeah.
Is this an opportunity for this committee to put forward, I'm actually not really asking you, I'm really asking you, Bishop, to put forward like things that we would like commissioners to direct the Bureau to develop? Because my understanding, if I can say this again, is that there will be no new budget ask or no new programming budgeted and asked for by the bureaus unless a commissioner says, go make that thing, right? So if we were like, we want PHB to develop a program around whatever, I mean, you said you're already doing homeownership pension stuff, but like,
Yes,
program
this is
around
ours.
figure out how to put childcare in these buildings. We need to tell the commissioners that so that somebody up there in the 5 people will tell Director Callahan, now go make a budget request for that.
So I will answer by saying this, Dr. Bates, this report is our report, and we can craft it as we choose and we deem best to do so. And so based on the decision of this committee, what we believe needs to be communicated, this is our report to do.
It just seems like there is like a odd process, no offense, there's a little bit of odd process happening, which maybe makes an opportunity that's a little different from what it was last year, or actually requires something different to happen from last year, where we had the conversation where people said, oh, what else do you need to be successful, ba-doo-ba-doo. But we actually have to say to them, like, please tell someone to develop that budget program.
So you and I sat in front of the commissioners and the mayor, who, and Commissioner Fish, I believe, said, tell us what you need from us. And I think part of our opportunity is to do just that. For us to say, based on the work we've been doing for the last 97, felt like 97 years, based on the work that we've been doing, here's what we see. I think it's highlighting the work that has happened. It's also identifying the gaps that need to be closed, and then to say, here are some specifics. This is our opportunity to do so. And I'd love the collective wisdom and skill around the table to make sure we cover that. Does that answer your question, Dr. Bates? Other voices?
Well, so is there an opportunity to have a section in here that says recommendations? And I think if we have that section, and the hope is that it's timed so that when they're doing their budget, our recommendations will be taken into consideration and hopefully be funded, or at least acknowledged.
Doctor, would you be willing to be a part of this process and even potentially present this year?
It depends on when it is, but
Okay.
the date.
We do not, but it would be late February or March.
We have put in a request to the mayor's office for the last week of February or the first week of March.
I'd be happy to, if time schedule permits.
Jillian, any comment? All right. Tristan?
Yeah, first I would like to say I would offer myself to craft the document or be a part of that process. One of the things that I think it would kind of back up some of the other comments we've already had is where applicable, showing our numbers in comparison to previous years, or even to the previous year, and seeing how much we've increased or what work, show how the work that we've done, how it increased in the numbers. It could be a graph, something that is very visual that can just stand out. I agree with Felicia. I think this is very text heavy and very, very dense, but if we can give an opportunity to just easily show, like, this is where we started, this is where the increase, this is the growth, even where some things are dips, but these are the things that we've done to take place, to fix those problems. I think, I think that'd be a very, very powerful visual in a document like this.
Dr. Bethel, anything to contribute, sir? Any thought, feedback?
This time?
I do have one more comment in honor of James Posey, who isn't here, and my friend Nate McCoy. I think this document also should show that economic investment in our community. So on our construction projects, how many African Americans actually worked on these projects? I think we should highlight that as well. And if it's something we need to improve on, then it's something we need to improve on as well. I think that because it's not just the units that are built, but the jobs and the investment that has been made back into our own community would be great in the 2018 version.
Very much. Ms. Verge, any comment?
It would be interesting to see on the business aspect of our projects, how many have been black businesses and other color businesses.
Well, thank you. We've got at least two people committed to help craft this and help it have the necessary content and visual and so forth. And so we can begin that process and make sure that we, as much as possible, capture all the information we need to capture to present an accurate picture. And then any recommendations in terms of this is what we see. I think that's something for us to visit and talk about. All right. Well, thank you very much, committee, for being here tonight. I appreciate your time. Thanks, everyone, for gathering. Again, have an excellent Thursday evening.
Thank you.